Hey guys, Loco here with a very new style of video. So normally I think reaction videos are actually pretty garbage, but I've been watching a lot of Asmongold reacts to blah 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 WoW videos, and it's actually been really great. I've been getting back into WoW Classic. I know, I said I would never get back into WoW Classic. I already paid my dues. I already leveled 260s, but Lustboy told me he's playing World of Warcraft, and you know, my best friend Lustboy is playing World of Warcraft, so I kinda got dragged into it. I mean, I personally don't really want to play World of Warcraft, but my friend Lustboy plays it, so what am I gonna do? Anyways, when I was watching Asmongold's videos on him reacting to like the various WoW videos, he actually did a really great job of adding his own opinion and adding more to the video, and it became more of a commentary video than a react video. And one of my favorite YouTuber is H3H3. I love his videos. I love Prank Invasion. I love the series he did on Prank Invasion. Most of you guys probably know him from Vape Nation. So yeah, I want to do videos that are like that, but I want to do it about League of Legends. So if you don't know, last year I used to be a game designer for about 6 months. That doesn't make me an expert on game design, but I played League for an extremely long time. I coached for a long time too, and I also am very interested in game design. So I pretty much view every single dev diary or any kind of League of Legends like content that Riot puts out, and any kind of game design articles or anything on game design I try to learn more about. So I'm gonna say I am let's say a novice to like an entry-level game designer. So Riot designs a lot of champions, and there's some champion designs I absolutely disagree with and I just hate, and there's some champions I fall in love with. And I want to start kind of grading and judging Riot's champions, and also talking about what kind of role they played in competitive. So it's going to be a brand new series. But before we can do that, we actually have to realize what makes successful champions. So I was trying to go back, read articles. Luckily for me, Riot has a video on successful champions. So we're going to check out that video. Yeah, that's new content. Hope you guys like it. So the video is called Successful Champions / Dev Diaries. Let's see what it's about.
Hey guys, Greg Street here from the League of Legends design team. The topic I want to talk about today is champions, and specifically, what do we think a good champion looks like?
So if you guys don't know who this is Greg Street. He actually used to be a really big designer back in Blizzard for World of Warcraft, and a lot of people blame him for stuff like Frost Mages and basically WoW getting ruined as a game. I have no idea which parts he really had big control over in World of Warcraft, and also just the World of Warcraft fan base is very rabid because that game was so popular and it was so many of people's like life. I wouldn't even say it's their second life, it was their primary life. Like they log on to start living and they log off and they're like basically like not living. So yeah, people had a lot of emotional comments towards it, and some people in the League of Legends community blame him for League of Legends going downhill, which I think is ridiculous. I just know as a public figure he gets so much hate, so I as a public figure get a lot of criticism. Then again, if Jesus came back on Earth, he'd get criticism from internet and Twitter and Reddit users. So yeah, I mean, public figures getting criticism is nothing new, but hilarious to see that he switched over to League of Legends, and he's one of the biggest voices in League of Legends design, if you didn't know who this was.
You might be surprised, it's not just play rate or win rate. There's a lot more stuff that goes into it.
Of course, I mean, it's how the champion feels to play, how does the champion look, obviously.
There are 5 pillars that we treat as the most important. These are satisfying to play,
okay,
a resonant theme,
okay,
being able to express your skill on the champion, okay, fair to play against,
okay,
and then the champion also has to be unique. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on what these 5 mean.
And these are very good champion pillars. I would actually divide them into 2, aesthetic and gameplay. The theme and the uniqueness, I think these fall under like kind of the aesthetic of the champion, and the other 3, satisfying to play, skill-expressive, and fair, these are all gameplay aspects. So I would say you can even go simpler, and the 2 biggest pillar for how Riot judges a champion is gameplay and aesthetic.
So satisfying to play is one of the more nuanced factors here. To players, it just feels good when you hit the button. And
I mean, it's very simple. So champions with very low windup and that play very cleanly, so champions like Lucian are very satisfying to play. Champions with long windup can be unsatisfying to play, like Nautilus.
As designers, we think about things like, you know, what's the cooldown of this ability? How much wind up does the animation need before the ability goes
off? The wind up, like you mentioned.
That kind of just feels good when when you hit the button and see the reaction in the game. But it also has to do with do the visuals and the audio kind of match your expectations? if the ability is supposed to be like a machine gun, does it like fire, really kind of rapidly and maybe a little erratically?
Yeah, so there's like certain amount of crunch certain abilities have. What abilities have a really good crunch? Blitzcrank hook. When you shoot a blitzcrank hook, there is like a very satisfying sound that comes out, and it's a very unique sound. And when you hit a champion and it gets pulled back, like a gameplay aspect is very satisfying. I would say blitzcrank hook is something that ranks extremely highly and like satisfying. Something that would be like very unsatisfying would be like the Malphite skill, like that slams on the ground. I think that skill is like extremely unsatisfying. You slow down enemy attack speed, but you do really low damage, and both of them are very hard to read. Yeah, I think that's an example of a skill that's extremely unsatisfying to use.
Example we use a lot is Jinx's Zap. It's a pretty simple ability, but the visuals kind of match your expectations. When you pull it off right, you see damage.
Wow, I'm surprised that's the example they mentioned, because Jinx's Zap comes with a lot of wind-up, so a lot of times it can be very unsatisfying, and it's a very frustrating skill shot to use a lot of times.
We talk about the resonant theme for a champion. This is like, what is their story? Who are they as a person or a non-person, as the case may be? What is their character, and how does their gameplay match that?
So like a champion with a strong theme, you should be able to look at, and you should be able to tell what kind of skills they'll have, whether they'll do magic damage, whether they'll do physical damage. Just by looking at the champion, you can tell what kind of story that champion has and how the gameplay looks like. That's a champion with very strong themes and very strong visuals.
We've recently started thinking about champions in terms of broad play versus deep play.
Huh?
So a broad champion is one that is, lots of players play this
okay,
champion.
so easy to
Is a great
play.
Example.
Basically,
lots of players
approachability.
play these champions with some frequency. So
I mean, you can tell if a champion is broad or a champion is very deep with a very simple way. The cheap champions are going to be very broad because Riot wants people to have access to it, and Ashe is one of the cheapest champion. And if I'm not mistaken, she's one of the free champion. Another like a very cheap and a broad champion would be like Garen. A lot of the champions Riot designs nowadays are worth 6,300 IP or blue essence. So those would be like the deep champions. But Riot has so much broad champions already, so there's no use to making more broad champions. So that's why all the champions coming out nowadays are very unique and very deep and also very expensive.
We're okay with having champions that are not, not super high play rate, and maybe a lot of players haven't played them, but those players that do play them really, really love that champion.
So example would be like, Ivern is the one he's going to bring up, but like Aurelion Sol, extremely low play rate, but people that love playing him, and no champion quite plays like Aurelion Sol. What else? Like Bard. Maybe Bard has a higher play rate because he's like a fun champion to play, but he plays very differently from most supports. I mean, he's kind of like Donkey as a champion, and not a lot of people really enjoy Bard, but he's just very unique in that sense.
We suspected that there would be players out there that love Ivern and really enjoy just playing the jungle in a totally different way.
What about people playing against Ivern? Have you considered that?
Skill expression in terms of gameplay may be the most important pillar. It's not the only one, but League of Legends is a game about skill. A lot of what we're going for is that we know that getting better at something is very satisfying. It kind of keeps you coming back for more.
Yes, true to a degree. If you get better at something and you see constant improvement, then you do want to come back. But if also just the process of playing the champion is fun, then you'll come and play. I mean, how many of us are hard stuck at an elo but still play League of Legends because it's so fun to play, even if you don't improve? Like, it is definitely an aspect. If you get better at a champion and you can feel yourself improving, yes, you want to come back, but I don't think that's like a primary reason.
Kind of the classic is the skill shot, right? Instead of just targeting a champion and hitting a button and doing damage, you have to line it up and aim, which means you need to predict your enemy's, movements or anticipate them, or sometimes even kind of lead them into a trap where you can hit them with the skill shot.
So skill expression is basically choice. Think of it this way. What's more difficult, checkers or chess? I mean, obviously, chess is way more difficult than checkers. And the primary and the most simple way to think about it is there's way more options to play out a chess game than there is a checkers game. Like, there is way more options to play out a fight with an Annie compared to with a Silas, right? Any playstyle is very one-dimensional, and how you play Annie is going to be very simple. Think of Annie as checkers, and then think of Silas as chess. Like, there's so many different things you can do as a Silas in a team fight. There's different ults you can skill, different order of skill usage. So yeah, checkers to chess, that's like where the skill expression really comes in.
Ideally, we like champions that have some mix of both good decision making and game knowledge with the actual, how dexterous am I at clicking around on the map with my mouse.
Okay, the second part he's mentioning is like also decision making. But yeah, I mean, that goes into gameplay kind of. Like gameplay is combination of decision making with like you being able to actually play the game itself, you being able to click the button, you being able to have the muscle memory.
You consider someone like Zed, there's a lot of lining up the shots, dealing with the angles of yourself in the shadow, and a lot of the timing around when you want to use the different abilities. A counterexample is someone like...
yeah, Zed is a really good example. But also, I think Annie is like a perfect example of like a low skill expression champion. I'm surprised he's mentioning champions like Xin Zhao instead of Annie.
Xin Zhao, who has these abilities that you generally use as a combo together, the W and Q, but pretty much you always use them together. There's not a lot of decision making of should I use these, these.
This might be pre-update Xin Zhao, that's why he's saying it. I would say Xin Zhao isn't like a very good example of like a low skill expression champion. Like the old timing is really important. I guess he is one-dimensional. I just think there could have been better examples than Xin Zhao. Annie's a perfect one. Why didn't you use Annie?
So we could do all this work on making a good champion and still kind of mess them up if they're not fair.
Wow, this one's ridiculous because I think one of the primary things Riot tries to do nowadays is to be different and to be unfair. Like fair champions aren't fun or unique, and a lot of the designs are about being unique and about being different. So it is hilarious to me that fair is one of their pillars. Like, do you think Akali is fair? Do you think Kiana is fair? Like they break so much of the basic pillars. So I mean, this has to be outdated. There's no way fair is still one of their like primary pillars in terms of champion design.
Is it fair for the other player, the other team, to deal with your champion?
Akali Shroud before you guys nerfed it. Obscurity, not being able to be seen under turrets. That was definitely not a fair mechanic.
Ranged champions like Ziggs are very effective at range, but kind of squishy if you can get up close to them. Whereas a Juggernaut like Darius is the opposite. He's very, very kiteable, but if he catches you, if he corners you somewhere, there's going to be a lot of hurt coming your way.
Wow, if this is like a pillar they judge champions on, fairness, a lot of their new designs really failed in that.
We have over 130 now, and so we really think it's incumbent that each new champion we add, and even every old champion that we update, is somehow unique. We have a lot of ninjas in League of Legends. We have a lot of dudes with swords. And that's not to say we won't add more, but they have to bring something new.
So unique and fair, I think, are somewhat contrasting values, because to be fair, you have to play within like a certain box, right? There's things that are fair. And Riot, as you said, has over 130 champions. So a lot of the fair box is already filled up. And for a champion to be unique and different, they can't be like other champions. So they start breaking rules. And that's what Riot kind of did, like with Akali. Like Kiana is like a different champion I don't even want to talk about. Like Kai'Sa, she's very unique. I wouldn't say she's fair, but she's also very unique. So there are some contrasting values at play here.
We do spend a lot of effort to make sure that new champions and updated champions really belong to League. They need to fit within Runeterra. They need to make sense inside the game world. Some of the older champions we've made, I'll give an example, Pantheon I pick on a lot because he's kind of a generic Spartan guy. That's not to say there's not room for that.
It's hilarious how he's talking about champions need to fit within like the world of Runeterra. A huge value that Riot had initially regarding some of the skins where they didn't want to do too many funny skins because it kind of breaks like the immersiveness of League of Legends and being in the world of Runeterra. And then there he's talking about immersiveness and fitting into Runeterra, and this Pantheon has like the Baker skin. It's like a business decision they made later on, like, hey, skins can be more fun, but it's just so funny to have the Baker skin show up when he's talking about does it fit into Runeterra.
When we do update him, I'm sure he will keep
he did get updated. This is an old video.
Shield and spear fighter. We just like to plan him a little more within League of Legends, something that makes sense when he's fighting alongside, say, Diana, Leona, Aurelion Sol, and other targets.
Yeah, they just made him a Targonic god, so, like, yes, you did exactly that. So they did deliver on this pillar at the very least.
So it might feel like uniqueness is all about the backstory of the champion, but the art plays a really big role in here as well.
Art is huge.
When you think about all these champions, you need to...
Like, this silhouette, like, you can tell it's immediately Diana. The weapon is very unique to her. The hairstyle is somewhat unique, but like a ponytail is a very common one. But just by the silhouette of her weapon, like you can tell it's Diana. That's what he means.
Identify them, very quickly on sight, just by their, often their silhouette. And this could be a challenge with the number of champions, the number of skins we produce. But now I want to go into a little more, drill down a little more detail on certain champions to kind of look at how do they stack up in terms of
Show me some
satisfying
examples.
gameplay, fairness, uniqueness, and so on. First one I want to talk about is Nunu. Nunu is a kid with a Yeti. In terms of satisfying
So this is old Nunu from like the visuals of it?
gameplay, I don't think Nunu scores very well here. The abilities themselves feel old. So when I was talking
Definitely
about
feels
like,
old.
you pushing the button and seeing a cool animation or seeing unique visual, there's not a ton of that there. He probably gets the closest with his ult, which is a pretty big effect and can really turn the course of a game. So again, I'm not announcing a Nunu update here, but if I was working on it,
I mean, a huge problem Nunu has, or the old Nunu, was his E and his R. And he doesn't have other ways to interact with enemy champions. So yes, he was like very unsatisfying and a very like simplistic and a one-dimensional champion to play. Another like problem that came with Nunu, this isn't really Riot's fault, but like Nunu became the poster child of inting. So that was like always associated with Nunu, and he was kind of like a troll. So Riot did actually mention that, and they said like they wanted to keep like the troll aspect of Nunu focused on one skin, the robot Nunu skin, like the disco, like I forgot what it's called. Anyways, you guys know which skin I'm talking about, like the robot Nunu. But I think that is very much a champion identity of Nunu now. Like Nunu is the int, like Nunu is the champion you don't want to see on your team, and a lot of players just get a negative feeling when Nunu's picked because, oh man, this guy might just run Ghost Cleanse and run it down.
with Nunu, you sometimes aren't sure, are you playing the Yeti or playing the kid? And I'm sure there's a lot of League players out there who think, oh yeah, the Yeti is Nunu.
Yeah,
the example of
it
Kled,
feels
though,
like you're
he
just
does
playing
dismount.
like Nunu.
Kled and Skarl, his mount, have very different personalities and even a little different gameplay. And when they kind of Voltron together, they're more powerful than they are separate. Which is not to say that's the specific take we need to do on Nunu, but I think it would be cooler to deliver a little bit more on, no, this is really two characters together playing as one.
I don't think they really did that. Like, Nunu still feels like I'm just playing like the giant Yeti. Like, the kit doesn't really come into play. Like, the Nunu model will still perfectly make sense if the kid wasn't a part of it. So I actually think Riot failed in that sense. Like, just imagine the Nunu model without the kid. Like, everything he does still makes sense. Like, throwing the snowball, like, Nunu himself can throw the snowball. Like, the Q, like, biting someone, the Yeti does that. Like, the ultimate, the Yeti can do that. Like, Bloodlust, like, the Yeti can do that. They actually failed in that regard in terms of the remake. Like, Nunu still does not feel like a mounted champion. Because we're, like, living in the future, like, way past when this video was made, and they remade all these champions. Like, the champions they mentioned so far, Pantheon, Nunu, and then now they're going to mention Aatrox. All these champions got remade. Like, it's hilarious that they're failing on some of the pillars that they mentioned.
So, second case study I want to walk through is Aatrox. Thematically, he really resonates with players. Like, he's a dark, interesting character. He does crazy things. The Darken story is really fascinating. When we first created Aatrox, he was, acquired at really, really high rates. Since then, it has fallen off dramatically because he just doesn't deliver on that initial promise. Most of his abilities are not that interesting. So I'd say he gets low marks in terms of satisfaction and uniqueness.
I'm actually shocked because I think the old Aatrox Q was extremely satisfying to use. So is his E, and also so is his R. The only ability that was extremely low impact I felt like was the W. And I felt like the new Aatrox rework is less fun to play than the old one. And like the new one has like such low impact skills, like the E. It's a dash, so it's very powerful, but in terms of like satisfyingness, it's very low.
Fairness is probably something that we could tune either way, but certainly if he has higher highs and lower lows, that'll give us more knobs and feel like he has more counterplay for the other team.
Aatrox and counterplay, good one.
We have made a couple of attempts at Aatrox, light updates to try to add a little more skill expression to his abilities, but I would say overall, missed the mark a little bit. We're nowhere near there, and he really needs, kind of a full update.
Little does he know, years after he made this video, Aatrox would still be suffering from the same problem. I wonder if they're gonna remake him a second time. I mean, they remade Rise like 3 or 4 times, so definitely possible, right?
At least in terms of his mechanics, his visuals aren't that bad. He's not that old as a champion. We just don't think he delivers on evil, blade-wielding demonic creature that kind of terrorizes the Rift.
I'm shocked that he's saying that, because like the old Aatrox felt like an evil demonic creature. Like his gameplay was about that. His gameplay was ruthless. Now the new Aatrox is like very like hoppy. He's very like bouncy. He feels like a bouncy hero. And that's not like what the fantasy of Aatrox was.
Let's talk about satisfying gameplay. I mean, he has a hook. He has Flay, which is a huge skill curve and like getting that ability to work correctly. He has the box. a lot of these he is fairly hard to learn and very hard to master. Thematic resonance, he does really well, in my opinion. He's kind of Runeterra's version of the Grim Reaper. He sucks souls into his lantern. We've done some neat things with him in terms of the Dark Star version of Thresh more recently. In terms of fairness for Thresh, if I had to throw stones at him, this is probably where I'd do it. He does a lot. He has a lot of strengths, and he kind of has an answer for every situation. So it's hard, counterplay is sometimes a challenge with him. You don't always know as an enemy, what am I supposed to do to stop him? He can kind of, do anything.
I actually do agree, like Thresh is a very skill-expressive champion. And because he's such a skill-expressive champion, there's just natural counterplay in the sense you either dodge the hook, he's either good enough to like flay you out of skills. It's just very dependent on the enemy skill level. I think there is a lot of counterplay around Thresh. Like, it sounds kind of crazy, but just don't get hit by the hook forehead. A lot of times, depending on the distance you're giving the Thresh, and also if by playing behind minions, like he can't hook you, there is a lot of counterplay around Thresh. I don't think Thresh is a champion where people play against and they're like, oh my god, this champion has such low counterplay.
Just to be fair, I think while he delivers well on satisfying gameplay and skill expression and thematic, fairness is probably where I'd ding him a bit.
Wait, why? I'm very shocked that he doesn't consider Thresh fair, because there is a lot of counterplay to Thresh, and he is not one of the most complained about champions. Nowhere near. So,
final case study, I'm going to talk about Morgana a little bit.
Okay.
She's an older champion, but still delivers, on some of these pillars really well. In terms of skill expression, Morgana still has some big decisions about how she wants to use her abilities. Spells like Dark Binding could really make or break a team fight, but you could also deploy them wrong and not get anything out of it. I think she's a good example of how you can deliver on a champion where you're making interesting decisions as a player without it getting into super complicated mechanical execution.
Oh man, what to say? Yes, Morgana has to make a lot of decisions, but her decisions only rely on two skills, Q and E. Beyond her Q and E, she has such little decisions to make. Like, what decision are you making with her W and R? Basically, Morgana is a two-skill champion out of lane a lot of times. I'm not sure if I'm just completely off on my read in what he's saying, but man, it's really weird to see him talk about Morgan that way.
Thematically, she's kind of a mixed bag. I think she has a cool personality, the fallen angel thing, but I think there's also a little bit of a missed opportunity to kind of make her our own. She feels kind of like the type of character you see in a lot of video games, and I don't know that you'd necessarily look at her and be like, oh yeah, she's from League of Legends. So in closing... Yes,
she does seem very generic, and another part, like where she doesn't seem like a fallen angel, is kind of her dressing. So she just looks more demonic than an actual angel. In the remake, like she still has a dressing, but it's like more wingy, so it's a little bit better. But I think that's where I would have docked the most points for Morgana, like her not really feeling like a fallen angel in terms of visuals. Like in terms of visual, she just looks more monster-y than a fallen angel.
So in closing, I talked a little bit about our philosophy today with these 5 pillars, but our philosophy changes over time. It is certainly not static. And the needs of League of Legends today are very different than what they were even a couple of years ago. We always try, as we're looking at what are the champions coming down the pipe that we're working on for the future, what problems are we trying to solve? What experiences are we trying to offer players that hopefully you guys haven't seen before?
I don't think there's a lot of problems for Riot to solve in terms of there's a champion that's really missing. There's something part of League of Legends that's really missing. If you think of a stereotype, or if you think of a gameplay pattern, I think League of Legends covers so much of those gameplay patterns. The only reason Riot makes new champions is for money and to keep the game fresh. I think just a problem they mentioned before is League of Legends has so many champions, and that's actually problematic. And they were thinking about rotating champions in and out. I mean, they never went through with that, but let me just give you the real. There aren't problems to solve. That's not why Riot's making new champions. The reason they're making new champion is to keep the game fresh at the cost of raising the bar or raising the barrier of entry, and also just making money. Anytime a new champion comes out, people buy the champion, people buy new skins. So a solution to this is actually just not make new champions anymore and just keep making skins. Then people will complain about the game being boring. Maybe if they change up the game enough, but if you keep changing the game, then it becomes hard to keep up with. So that's like the solution they ended up with, like make new champions, because anytime there is a new champion, you create new experience for the players. And if they just want to go back to the old version of the game, they can always ban the new champion, and then you're just back at the old version of the game. So that's why they make new champions. It's not to solve problems. That's just a generic bullshit PR answer.
2016, we did several more niche champions with, kind of unusual gameplay, or maybe the character themselves felt a little out in the frontiers of our world. And so far in 2017, we've done some pretty broad champions like Zai and Rakan.
Oh, Zai and Rakan were amazing designs.
And I think Kayn is kind of be there as well.
I think Kayn is also good design, but there's huge flaws with it, and they could have easily fixed the flaws, but they never did.
Towards the end of the year, you're going to see a mix of some broad appeal and some very, unique champions with kind of gameplay you've never seen before that we know aren't necessarily going to be appealing to everyone, but we want some players out there to be like, yes, this is my new main. So hopefully this is the beginning of a conversation. We'd love to get your thoughts on what of this resonates with you. Do you think there are pillars that we aren't taking seriously enough? Or
the fairness pillar, you're definitely not taking that seriously enough. I know I'm in the future and talking to you of the past and you of the past, like League of Legends, but the fairness pillar just got broken apart. Like you crushed it. You took that pillar and you broke it into a billion pieces.
Pillars that we claim are important, but we aren't actually delivering on.
The fair.
Please let us know, what your thoughts are on some of the champions I talked about, where opportunities are to add uniqueness that you haven't seen in League of Legends before. And overall, just really appreciate you taking the time to watch. Thanks a lot.
Thank you too, Ghostcrawler. Well, I'm gonna stop malding, because, no need to be malding so much, Loco. But overall, I actually enjoyed the video, and it gives us a good basis to go off of in terms of what Riot thinks is good champion design, and we can start judging the champions that way. So hopefully this video came out along with my first kind of like champion judgment, or like, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna call it. Basically the first champion video. This is just like a primer and also kind of a experiment in terms of doing React content, how you guys feel about React content. Maybe I'll do more React content if you guys really enjoyed this, but yeah, I hope you guys liked the video. Oh, before you guys go, don't you forget, I'm not crazy, I'm just Loco. Later.